Hey there, and welcome to With XO. I'm XO, Jorge Olivares, XORJE. That's why it's the X. And I'm excited because with my next guest, I've always wanted to talk with somebody about what it means to be brown enough. I am a Mexican American, third generation Mexican American from the South Texas region. And I feel like I'm always competing with myself, competing with the world, competing with other Latinos about what it means to be brown enough. So it only makes sense to welcome the author of the book, Brown Enough, the host of the podcast Brown Enough, and also as he brings it up, and the host of a limited run series called Rubirosa, which we're going to talk a little bit about too. And the man's doing everything: author, actor, podcaster, also a PhD candidate because you got to do all the things. And so I'm excited to welcome Christopher Rivas to talk about what it means to be brown enough, what it means to be an actor at this moment, what it means to be an advocate for this particular cultural moment that we're in, and how he's doing it with a smile on his face. Because if you've been watching the press tour he's been on, he is constantly smiling, and I wouldn't blame him because of everything that he's got going for him. So, Christopher, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I've been thinking a lot about smiling lately. I think I smile in general. I think that's a thing I do. I've been told it's a thing I do. And do you know Thich Nhat Hanh, the great like Vietnamese Buddhist monk? He always said, and we know this scientifically, like smiling actually relaxes the muscles on your face,
Okay, yeah, I can see that. I
which
should do.
I actually can't see. Like I have a hard time understanding why, because it's like you're turning the corners of your mouth up, and it's like that's relaxing the muscles of my face. But science says it, so I've been thinking a lot about just the relaxation we can get just by smiling.
If science says it, then it must be
It
true.
must be true.
So I do want to start about the press tour. You've been on a variety of different places promoting the book, as you rightfully should be doing. What has that entire journey been like? Being able to not only promote yourself, the work you've been doing, and the kind of work you've been doing within yourself to answer the question about are you brown enough, but to constantly hear those words, brown enough, brown enough, brown
Mm.
enough. How does that how does that all resonate with you?
Beautiful question, because I actually don't think I've thought about it. Like my initial impulse to what I was gonna say to this question was I care less about the press and more about the idea that the medicine is now like it's out in the world. People are engaging with it, um, sending me incredible messages, writing beautiful reviews. Like it's out in the world. But hearing what you just said about the term being in the language, brown enough, brown enough, brown enough, here, 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 uh, live TV, this, blah, 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 blah. It is so beautiful. All right, that's my pat on the back. Like, okay, the whole reason for writing this book was for creating a space for brownness in this black and white world. I wanted to explore brownness, what it meant to take up space in there, to love our brownness, how our brownness shows up in this race conversation. And so I guess it is showing up, right? All of this press and all these times that people say brown enough, as you just said, means it is showing up. It's starting to take up space even more.
I feel like I have to note, especially because for those of you who are viewing this, you will also be listening to this in podcast form. But if you're viewing this, Christopher's wearing a cap that says Bodega on it, and as a New York native that he is, it makes sense that that's something that he's actively promoting. Because when you talk about identity, and when you talk about this idea of brownness, at least my interpretation of brownness came from where I'm from, which is South Texas. And I can imagine that brownness, your interpretation of it and your first introduction to it came from where you're from. So, talk a little bit about how New York and just those early years introduced you to what brown even meant.
Yeah, so I'm from Queens, and Queens is the most diverse place in the world. Like I actually think that's
Hmm.
I think that's scientifically correct. Again,
Yeah.
science. Like I think we've got the numbers to say that specifically Jackson Heights, like an area in Queens, is the most diverse place in the world. That's a wild statement. And I had no idea how beautiful that was until, 30 something years later. I'm working on this book and I'm realizing that brownness surrounded me. The multiple colors, flavors, identities, cultures, um, sounds, rhythms of brownness were all around me, and that they couldn't be contained in a single box, right? Like, let's get clear: brown is a beginning to a conversation of more inclusion, but it is not the end point. Because you just said so beautifully, your brown is not my bodega brown, you know, and my
Mhm.
bodega brown is not someone's Miami cafe con leche brown, and cafe con leche brown is not my Pakistani South Asian friend's brown. Um, but I do think there is more brownness in this world than anything else, hands down. I believe that with my whole heart, and so that's my upbringing. I'm from Queens. I'm from a very diverse area in Queens. My pops was the super of a 164 unit building in Queens, which means I got to know a lot of different people very intimately. Uh, those 164 people were my brothers, sisters, friends, babysitters, and and that was so incredibly. That taught me more than any book could ever teach me about diversity, about inclusion, about love, about generosity. And so I'm very proud of where I came from. Like, sure, I'm Dominican, I'm Colombian, I'm brown, but I'm also a New Yorker. And I hold that in high regard. Like,
As you should. I feel
yeah.
like it's a very rare commodity when you can say that you're not only a native New Yorker, but you're a native New Yorker who has a particular background, which you do, as you just mentioned, Dominican, Colombian. I'm curious about if you can talk about the distinction between those two cultures and how they approach brownness. Because I think if uh, tell me a little bit if there even is a distinction, or if it was easy for you to kind of come into who you are because of each of those identities.
Yeah, not easy for me to come into who I am because of so many things that come with the American dream and first generation parents and immigrant parents who assimilate so unconsciously to give their child the life they never had, to give them the life that this country says we can give them. And so it wasn't easy to come into my own brownness. That was a later exploration of realizing how much I was trying to be like whiteness, actually. And but I will speak to the differences of those brownness because I also have to get honest, right? As a Dominican, the Dominican in my blood, if you are Dominican, it means that in your blood is one of the worst genocides in the history of the world, right? An overnight genocide of the Haitians. And so, what does that mean is in my blood? As much as there is beautifulness in my blood, there's also intense anti-blackness, an intense possible hatred of oneself. And so, exploring my brownness and being enough for my version of brownness also means looking at that, looking at why my black grandmother is not black, but she not black. That's one half of me. And then you have another half, which is Colombian and also beautiful and flavorful and unique. Uh, Incredible, sancocho and incredible salsa and cumbia, but also one of the largest slave trades in the history of the world, which I don't think gets spoken about a lot, but a lot of African slaves went to Colombia. And we took those African slaves and we put all of them after we made them work for us. We put them in Cartagena. We took all of them and put them in one place, and we called it the Chocolate City, which is also something we used to call Washington D.C. So that's in my blood, right? I think coming to the fullness of who you are means you don't just get to be like, yo, I'm the best, I'm this, I'm that. Oh my gosh, look how great we are, blah, blah, blah. It also means there's probably some things in there that your ancestors can teach you that are not so beautiful, but will add to your fullness and will allow you to be a more present being on this planet. And so I would say those are sort of two ways I look at my two sides. I look at their music, sure. I look at their food. I look at their love. I look at the way they play dominoes differently. But I also look at their history. because being brown also means we are constantly navigating, you know, pro whiteness, which says mobility, success, moving up the social ladder, and anti blackness. And so that was sort of my journey of uncovering my brown enoughness.
Would you say that there's ever been a time before the podcast, before the book, before this notion of brown enough as the entity that it is today? Uh, was there ever a time where that question just like, or I should rephrase and say, when was the first time you remember asking yourself that question?
Well, it didn't really exist until, well, two moments. Discovering Porfirio Rubirosa in college, this Dominican man who James Bond was based on. I was a young theater student in a mainly white conservatory. As a little kid, I wanted to be James Bond. I had all my little Nerf guns strapped around me while I was in my underwear pretending to be Bond,
As one does.
as one does, pretending to be a white British dude. And it hit me. Like, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Yo, I was pretending to be some white dude. What if I was pretending to be my pops? What if I was pretending to be myself? What if I was pretending to be like the people in Queens, most of Queens? How would my life have been different? Would I have cared? Would I have loved myself more? So that's like one moment where I'm like, whoa, I'm not like everybody else. I have a unique experience. I have tried to, I want to work in Hollywood. So does that mean I'm trying to be like the white boys on TV? Is this why my manager tells me to get a nose job and cut my hair and blah, 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 blah? And then seeing Ta-Nehisi Coates, genius, writer, thinker, philosopher, being, and he speaks about black and white in America and race. And I got to see him seemingly by chance, had no idea who he was. And I asked him as a Dominican Colombian brown kid from Queens, like, where am I in the conversation? And he said, not in it. And so I went home really wondering what it means to be in it and where am I? And where, the millions like me. And those were the two moments where brownness really, really washed over me and really made me face it. What does it mean to be brown? What does it mean to be able to navigate a bit of both sides? Uh, and how do I take ownership of that? Yeah.
Would you say you were angry, sad, or neither in response to being told, well, you're not even a part of the conversation?
All of the above. It was a true, I think shattering moments. Like, I don't think being shattered is a bad thing. I'll just put that out there. Like,
That's fair. Yeah.
I think being shattered is an opportunity to break some stories about who you are. Like, being cracked open is an opportunity to actually meet yourself. You thought you were a vessel of certain worth that could hold so much, and then you get cracked open. You're like, oh, I can hold so much more. I can be so much more. Um, and so it was all of it. It was a moment of anger. It was a moment of anger of like, that's your answer. Like, you want a Pulitzer Prize, and like your answer is 3 words. It's
Yeah.
like, bro, give me some more. Um, and it was also one of like, but you are a brilliant man, and less is more, and maybe you're right. And so it was medicine, and sometimes medicine don't taste so good. Uh, and so I had all of these, I had all the feelings at once, and enough to make me go in exploration, write it all down, and get a book out of it.
So let's talk about the book because I want to note for folks that it's called Brown Enough: True Stories About Love, Violence, the Student Loan Crisis, Hollywood, Race, Familia, and Making It in America. And so I wonder if we can kind of tackle some of these things one by one because it's quite fascinating to me that you've outlined it in this particular way. So if we can, let's start with the first thing that's outlined here, which is the love part. Uh, talk talk a little bit about how your identity, how being brown in the world has impacted your view of love. Because I think kind of to the points that you mentioned before, either being first generation, coming from an immigrant background, expressions of love can be a little bit different than those of our counterparts that we encounter on our day to day basis. Um, So let's tackle love first if we can.
Isn't every piece of art that someone makes kind of about love? Like,
I would one would
it's
hope so, right? Like
you know,
you
it's
put your love into it, and your love for either the art itself or for people who you want to see it or or experience it.
uh love stories, you know, I think top to bottom, this is a book about love because there's a love for my family right off the top, right? There's a love for Queens. There's a love for the brownness I knew about. There's a love for the little kid who didn't like who he was. There's a love for the adolescent young adult in me who made a lot of dumb decisions in order to try and find himself. You know,
As we all
like
do.
as we all do. There's just full of love in here. There's a love for Ta-Nehisi Coates, right? There's a love for Porfirio Rubirosa. There's a love and there's the opposite of that for all of these things in my life. So I think love is in this thing top to bottom. You know, there's a love for everyone fighting the good fight, every body of culture who walks out into the world with enough courage to say, I am worth it. Right. It's love top to bottom. Um, it's exploring my love literally in dating, right? It's me looking at dating white women and race and love and right. So it's the more stereotypical view of love, and it's also the more zen, holy, all expansive love is a state of being versus a thing you do uh exploration of love. And I hope it's filled with that top to bottom, you know. It's a love of John Leguizamo, it's a love of theater, it's a love of acting, it's a love of my curls. It's a love of even America, which pisses me off. It's all of it.
I love that it's the so I mentioned that we were going to try to break down each of the things that are included in the subheader of the book itself, and I'm curious that it started with love. What was the decision to have love be the first in that long list of things that we encounter?
I mean, we it was a lot of versions. Like I
You're
first
like, this is draft number 35. We had all these different mock-ups.
like at first the publisher pitched this long subtitle to me. They pitched it. They were like, I think this is it. Like, I want to do a callback to older books used to do longer subtitles, right? And then books kind of became about fixing your problems. So, like, you know, uh, brown enough, how to make it in America, or you know, ways in which you know, like a very simple sort of guidebook. But my publisher pitched this thing, and at first I was like down. I was down. I was like, yeah, let's do it, you know? And then when I saw it, I was like, it's too long. It's too long. And I think that's a lack of courage in me, right? That's a lack of courage. I didn't believe that anyone could believe that I could speak to these things, that many things. I got shook. I got shook when I saw it, and I tried to stop it. And I hit up my book agent, I hit up the publisher, I hit up my manager, and I was like, no, 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 it's too long. What do you think? And we're all talking, everyone's talking, and then eventually everyone's reading, and people are like, but it is about this. And I'd be like, all right, well, let's cut this. And they'd be like, no, but it is about your family. And you'd be like, all right, well, let's cut race. And they'd be like, that's impossible. It's literally about race. And then you'd be like, all right, let's cut this. And be like, no, but it is about this. Like,
It's like,
um,
I can't kill my darlings. There's so many different themes that are attached to this book that it makes sense to allow the reader, the potential reader, to see what they're in for.
and so I really thank my team because I lost faith for a sec. You know, I lost courage, I lost conviction. You sit with your baby for so long, you forget, you know, you don't know what it just felt like gibberish. All of it felt like gibberish. I was like, no, this ain't good. This can't no. This thing? Like I don't even know. So I thank the outsiders who guided me, who kept me strong to keep going in this direction. And so maybe that's why love goes first as well, right? Because it took a lot of love just to keep this subtitle.
Mhm. So I said we were gonna tackle a little bit. I wanna skip violence for a second and go to the student loan crisis. I started by mentioning that you are a PhD candidate, you are pursuing higher education. Uh, Presumably, you have gone through so many hoops to be able to just get to this point because of the way that the education system is set up sometimes not to benefit those of us who look brown enough. But let's talk about why that gets its own notification, that we should be focusing on this particular crisis and how it affects how we view ourselves in American society.
Yeah, oddly enough, the salespeople at Simon and Schuster were more you could say raise, you could say all this stuff, and they were like, "Yeah, whatever." And then they were like, "Student loans. Oh, yeah, I like this." Like that was their
This is the one
that
that
was
should
their
stay no
in.
matter what.
Yeah, that was their in with student loans. And I was like, "Oh, wow, interesting." Um, the title of the chapter, the student loan chapter, is called The American Dream. I think America is the first pyramid scheme. I think it doesn't exist as an idea for you or me. It wasn't made for us. It was made to extract from us, but not to regenerate us or nourish us or hold us even. Student loans to me are a direct example of how much society tells you to be the best, but doesn't actually want to help you be the best. Wants to take from you literally, um, and doesn't want to give back to you. And I feel wildly grateful, especially as an artist. I have 6 figures of student loan debt. Like, as an artist, one of the most valuable things you need is time to pursue your art. And student loans have absolutely destroyed art, I think, in this country, because so many young people took these astronomical loans, which is criminal, with big hopes and dreams, and then they got out and they were victimized. They were like, "Well, you made a stupid mistake. No one told you to do that." No, uh, and then they were never able to pursue their art because they needed 2, 3 jobs. They had to walk dog. They had to walk a dog on the weekends, and then they had to like be a barista and then do this, and then take the Postmate job. And where is the time to be an artist, to think, to process, to breathe, to enjoy your life? And so I have a deep, 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 deep battle, love, gratitude, anger towards America, towards the student loan crisis, towards higher education, um, towards the lack of education about higher education, towards the lack of education about finances and all of this. And uh, it's the chapter in my book that I am most proud of, that was the hardest to write, that I think is the most honest. Um, really seeing this country as like, man, I got lucky, you know? And knowing that in this country, sometimes your ass got to get lucky. uh, and I got lucky. And it's a big goal of mine to start a scholarship fund for young brown kids who want to study theater. And that's like a top of my list goal. And that is my way of sort of fighting that system. Yeah. So that's why it gets its own category.
I love that. I am going to ask this question, and I don't want to at all take away from the overall usage of the word in how it's utilized in the book. But everything you just described about how this country isn't built for us, particularly people that look like you and I, people who are from quote unquote marginalized communities as they themselves see themselves to be marginalized. Do you see that as violent? Considering I said we were going to skip that word
Oh yeah,
violence.
100%. 1000%. This country is violent in its ways of abuse, of extraction. We are a product for them. We are a product for an arrow that must go, 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 go. The growth model, the capitalism, consumerism model is an arrow that must continue to move upwards by any means necessary. And whenever you say by any means necessary, it means you will take from people and from planet by any means necessary. No looking back. And this country is built not to look back, but to look forward, 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 forward. And when I think about brownness, I'm actually thinking about looking back, stepping off the wheel, getting off the arrow, looking at indigenous ways of restorative, uh, regenerative ways of looking at love, looking at climate, looking at the planet, looking at education, looking at story, you know. Uh, yeah, so I think it is very violent because this country, in order for it to continue to grow, is going to have to take violent measure and has taken violent measures forever, and will continue for likely past my lifetime. Um, but there is hope.
Again, I don't want to diminish or take away from how that word violent is seen by people, especially when it comes to physical violence, emotional violence, from whoever it comes from, either people who are in power, people who are part of the quote unquote majority. And when you talk about people who are in the quote unquote majority, it's difficult to not address Hollywood. And I will say that it was. That's how I became aware of your work a couple years ago when you called attention to some of the difficulties of Hollywood. And I think one of the things that you called attention to was your curly hair and how there was all sorts of interpretations of what a Latino actor should look like, or somebody who's playing a particular character should look like. So let's tackle Hollywood a little bit. You live in LA now. You're an actor. So what has Hollywood been doing this whole time for you?
I want to challenge the quote unquote majority, right? I use the term global majority. We are the global majority.
Yes,
Uh,
thank you for that.
we are the global majority. And I think it's what numbers did I hear? 49% of millennials identify as multicultural. 51% of Gen Z identify as multicultural, right? We are becoming more culturally fluid.
And living in the hyphen.
Yeah, living in the hyphen. Beautifully said. Now, Hollywood thinks it is the representation of the majority. And that is the dream that it sells us. That is the image it has sold us for a very long time. And the thing about images is they are powerful. They are wildly powerful. Even if we don't believe them, they are powerful if we see them and if we see them enough. That is literally how hypnotism and like brainwashing works. That is how it works. Hollywood plays a part in this, whether they know it or not. And they have for a very long time, since the silent picture days. Uh, and media. I think when I say Hollywood, I'm also talking about just media in general, right? Let's look at magazines, billboards, images, anything that is telling you what is worth being displayed on a larger screen. Don't ask me why, but I fell in love with it. I was a real young kid. I was a real young kid, and I loved it. I loved everything that the TV and the movies had for me. I loved it from the moment I saw Peter Pan on Broadway in 5th grade. I loved it. I saw Freak on Broadway. God bless. I was born in New York and I got to see theater, and I loved it. And I loved what the stage allowed me to be, and I love what television has the potential to allow me to be at times. It can also really hurt me, when it wants me to be drug dealer, bag boy, line cook, uh, immigrant, this, that. Uh, and and so yes, I'm an actor in Hollywood. I am not a martyr. I'm a working actor in Hollywood. I'm extremely grateful for it. It is because of my love for it I can call out its obvious flaws, and I can challenge it. And my goal in Hollywood, it is nice to receive fat checks. Like I said, I got a lot of student loans, y'all. It is even better to sign them. And nothing will change in Hollywood until the global majority is signing it. Until people who look like you and I imagine many of your listeners, are the ones signing the checks, not just receiving the fat checks. And so that is a goal of mine, is to become a check signer. versus it ties into my student loan, like my scholarship fund, right? I want to sign checks. I want to be able to give them more than receive them. Then the images start to change. Then HBO doesn't take, 5 shows off the air centered around bodies of culture because they're returning to their prestigious roots, which really just means their white roots.
You mentioned the sort of different categories of characters that Latino actors normally go for, um, even though it was gender specific in this particular case. But what is there a role that is part of these quote unquote stereotypical archetypes that you would be excited to pursue because of how you can breathe life into that role, or is that something that you just don't want to actively be a part of?
I mean, I've done them all. Every role I said is one I've played. Like literally, I think I've hit most. I've done drug dealers, I've done criminals. I've done bad boys. Yeah, I've done line cooks. I've done an immigrant in search of, like what was that? Something like that on some medical show. Like I've done them.
One of the MDs.
Yeah, I've done them all. Um, the role I'm excited about, I'm trying to be in a When Harry Met Sally. I'm just trying to be me.
Hmm.
I'm just trying to be me. Like, and that's what we need, right? When I have a play, The Real James Bond was Dominican, and we got to do it in New York. And this young theater student at Pace came up to me after and he said, I thought I needed heroes and superstars who looked like me. But after seeing this, I realized I just need normal, beautiful brownness on blast. I need normal people telling their stories. I need to see normal people more often, you know, getting love, being worth it, being enough. And so that's the role I'm excited about. Just put me as a lead in a rom-com. Not because I'm Latin, Dominican, brown, just put me in it because I'm a person worth putting in a rom-com.
And have these people not feel the need to make your name Gustavo,
Yeah.
Rodrigo, something that is meant to call attention to your brownness when sometimes all that needs to be called attention to is your humanity.
Yeah. Like that's what I'm sort of manifesting and putting out there.
I want to return to the titling again of the book. It's called Brown Enough: True Stories About Love, Violence, the Student Loan Crisis, Hollywood, Race, Familia, and Making It in America. So we've had a chance to touch upon quite a bit of them. There it is. Show the people. Uh, so let's talk a little bit about race, and I'm going to make it a bit of a quick question in that I feel like I still have difficulty, and I say this as somebody who was a Chicano studies major. I still have difficulty in choosing what race I am in certain forms, in surveys. What race do you choose, or which one do you gravitate to? And do you still have difficulty choosing one?
Yeah, I try to do none. Like
None of
I
these
try to
things
do
that are
none
here.
or other. I don't like supporting the census. It doesn't support me. It's not here for me. Um, there isn't a box that can contain us. There's not, we're seeing this now more vocally in gender. Uh, it's everywhere. There isn't a box that can contain your race, your ethnicity, your nationality, your gender. I want the no box, or I just want the box that says everything. All of the above. Um, but I know that they want to put us in boxes. I know that they want to put us in our tribe. I know that they want to put us in our place. Those go very closely together. Uh, and I don't like to participate in that if I don't have to. And normally I'm pretty good at not having to.
You're like, I'll keep that over there.
Yeah.
Uh, I feel like one of the most important when it comes to the understanding of being brown enough, it stems with the familia part of it. And getting that definition from them, either by example, by language, by word, talk about the role that familia has played for you. I love that when you introduce the Brown in a podcast, which is available wherever you listen to podcasts, especially the one you're listening to now. But we hear your dad's voice, and I love that already from the get go. We understand where you're rooted. So let's bring up the familia a bit if we can.
For better or worse, we are our it's like a therapy. So we are our like
We're just
nature nurture,
representations of our parents.
nature nurture, and their representations of their parents, and their, um we're all in this thing together doing our best. And I got really lucky at some point in my adult life. I decided to re-meet my parents as people, not parents. I decided to take the time to really get to know them and ask them questions, knowing that I didn't need them to take care of me. They don't need me to take care of them. Like, we can hang like as if I just met you at the bar. And that has changed our relationship. It has allowed me to appreciate them more, not be mad at them, not hold grudges against them. Why didn't you do this? I could do that for days. We could all do that for days. Why didn't you? Or why did you do this? Or why? They are doing their best. My parents were doing their best. Like, uh both my parents had fairly shitty upbringings, um abusive upbringings, right? Like, they just did their best with the skills and the hope and the love that they had inside of them. And for that, I am wildly grateful. And I am a part of them, and they are a part of me. And that is how we can, begin to break epigenetic trauma, but also embrace epigenetic genius. Also embrace the medicine that they have to offer us if we let it. The brilliance that our ancestors have to offer us, the guidance. Um, and so familia is a big part of me and my work. Yeah.
It's one of those things where we understand what it means to survive by the actions and sometimes non-actions of our parents, about family members. And I think if we can stay with this theme of survival, that's how we're going to talk about that last part of the title, about making it in America and surviving the obstacles that have been put in place, either systemic obstacles, our own personal obstacles that we think are there that might not be there, and we've been gaslit to think that they're there. Or however we see the need to survive play out. Let's talk
Yeah.
about
So there's a
making it in America.
there's a chapter in the book titled, towards the second half, it's titled "Sacrifice My Identity. I'll do it. I will do anything to survive." These are the words that Elijah McClain used the night he was murdered by police in Aurora, Colorado. As he was being restrained, we have him on camera saying, "Please stop. I will do anything to survive. Sacrifice my identity. I will do it. I will do anything to survive." I believe that for too long, bodies of culture have been brainwashed into the idea that we must do anything in order to survive. And that if we want to even start the race, we have to work twice as hard just to get to the starting line, just to get there. I mean, you want to win, you gotta you gotta go full beast mode, like full hustle mode, full don't sleep, full all those corny ass lines in a CrossFit gym, like, um sweat is fat crying this, like, I'll sleep when I'm dead, all this aggressive language towards more, 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 more. I felt like I got dangerously close to burnout, dangerously close to what's next, what's next, what's next, without appreciating what's here. I still feel like I battle that. And I didn't want that. When I think about sustainability, this word that gets sold to you a lot regarding the planet, which is important, trust me, big part of the book also. Like, um,
Let's not avoid it.
but what is a sustainable living? I just want to go to bed in peace and wake up in peace. And as bodies of culture, I think that's really hard for us because we have so much we want to prove. We have this chip on our shoulder. Whiteness has told us we are not enough. It has shown it to us and it has told us in secret ways, in loud ways, in whispers, in violent ways, in images. Uh, and I want to take back my enoughness. I want to unplug from whiteness. And we have seen the matrix. It is aggressive to wake up. It is aggressive to unplug, but it is worth it. And so to me, making it in America feels less Trumpian, less less egomaniac, less more, less Barack Obama, I became president. Like, to me, making it in America, even, Barack only paid off his student loans in his second term, y'all. So it affects everybody. The
Mhm.
con and the dream affects everybody. Like, do I have to become president twice to pay off my student loans? You know, to me, making it in America means unplugging from whiteness, going to bed in peace and waking up in peace and loving who you are. Knowing that your cup isn't full after whiteness told you made it and they approve of you and you're enough. And your cup is full right here, right now. That to me is making it in America.
I wanna know, we've been talking about the title of the book, but again, the book title is the same as the new podcast title, which is available wherever you stream your podcasts. And if you wanna listen to Rubirosa, which was the limited series that Christopher did, it's on the same feed as Brown Enough. But let's end we spent talking a good portion talking about that subheader, that subtitle for the book. Let's return to the actual title of Brown Enough. And let's end with, will there ever be a moment where you've reached the enough?
Mm.
Or are you excited to be on this journey to find it because it will constantly be evolving for you?
I don't believe there's a finish line in anything. Death. Death is a finish line. Like, I will be complete when I die. I'll be complete. I'll be done. I'll be enough. Like, there's two options. I become enlightened right here, right now.
In this
And
very moment,
and
as
I'm
we're
like, I'm not on the rat race. I don't need to do anything. I'm good. Like, I'm free. And then there's death. And it's like, oh, I took all the workshops I could take. I did all the things I could do. I had, there's no better or worse after that. You did it. Completion. In that sense, I think enoughness is really fluid, which is how I want to live my life, in a more fluid way, in a more expansive way, in a more generous and kind way. To me, the idea of fluidity is really about kindness, kindness with where I am today, and that where I am today might not be where I'm at in 15 minutes. Um, Today, I feel enough. There are days where I don't. I saw an incredible movie last night with an incredible performance, and I did not feel enough. I felt like I hadn't even scratched the surface. Like, I got more to give. I got more to prove. Like, how come I'm not, I want that role. Like, I need these roles. What's up? Like, where am I? The narratives, the storytelling, the train, uh, the noise in the head. And so, like, I just want a quieter. I feel really enough when I have a quiet mind and a restful heart. Uh, so will there be a finish line? One of these days there will be. Uh, and my enoughness is more than when I was a child. I can say that. Like, I think the base point raises, right? I have less lows and less high highs. And what I'm trying to do is just have a more fluid center, a more grounded center, a larger center, um, more equanimity, the ability to hold more things in a graceful way.
dang. I love that word. I've never heard that word before, so I'm gonna be writing that shit down so I can remember to say it.
Equanimity is great. It's an idiom in Buddhism of becoming larger. Like the idea is that when you're born, you're a baby, you're a thin stick, and you get knocked around by the waves, far to the left, far to the right. It lifts you high, it lifts you low. And the idea of equanimity is, can I get more rooted? Can I get larger? More expansive, more rooted into the earth, more rooted into the sky, more east, more west, so that when the wave comes, it doesn't knock me as far. It might still knock me, but it don't knock me as far. And then eventually you are so fat that you are the wave. You are the sky. You are the ground. You ain't getting knocked around because you are the thing itself. Equanimity.
Nice. Well, for everybody who's getting a chance to watch this or listen to this, this is only a bit of the surface that you'll be able to encounter when you listen to the show itself, Brown Enough, which you can listen to wherever you listen to podcasts. Be sure to pick up the book. It is available wherever you buy books. And if you're still curious about, there it is, Brown Enough. And if you're still curious about the story of Porfirio Rubirosa, then go to the Brown Enough RSS feed, scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you'll be able to listen to all 10 episodes of that particular series. Christopher, where can people follow you for more information about the show, for just to see what you're up to after this?
Yeah, so Instagram is probably the most active platform. Christopher double underscore Rivas. There's also Twitter, Chris double underscore Rivas. But then there's also my website that has all the things. That's just ChristopherRivas.com. Uh, Always making things. Really grateful to be able to do that and share things with y'all. And I look forward to having conversations with y'all and reach out. I like dad jokes, so send me some like I like really corny jokes. So send them my way. And I appreciate you and your community. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining me today.